Welcome to Seeking Numina, the Sacred Places podcast. I'm your host, Elyse Welles, and today I'm joined by Coby Michael to talk about the Poison Path Oracle. Coby Michael is an occult herbalist and magical practitioner who teaches about the ritual use of poisonous and psychoactive plants. The author of The Poison Path Herbal and The Poison Path Grimoire, he owns and operates The Poisoner's Apothecary, an online shop and educational resource. He lives in St. Petersburg, Florida. And Coby has been on Magic Kitchen before. He'll be on again shortly. So we are very excited to have him here on Seeking Numina for the first time. Welcome.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Welcome to Seeking Numina. I'm your host, Elyse Welles, and I invite you to connect with the sacred wild within and around you through Numina, or sacred sites around the world, and the wisdom they hold. Together, let's remember the old ways, build relationships with land spirits, and dare to reach out to the fairies. The sacred wild is inviting you to dance in the moonlight. Will you answer their call? And I said this on Instagram, but I do really mean it. The Poison Path Oracle is my favorite book I've endorsed in like at least 6 months. I just adored it. As a native Greek priestess, you actually really speak to the reality of oracle sites and how entheogens may or may not have been used. So let's actually jump into that, because when people think oracle, maybe this is just people who I talk to, but usually when people hear the word oracle, they jump right to Delphi, the Oracle of Delphi. And there is a lot of conjecture on, were poisonous plants, psychoactive plants used in those oracular practices? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, with my poisonous plant and entheogen specialization bias out of the equation, it's like my intuition just tells me that they were. I don't know. When we look at um, other cultures practicing, various different shamanic traditions, there's like always some element of plant medicine being used to help induce different trance states. So I feel like to say that, this famous oracle that, is very like closely geographically associated to the Eleusinian mystery traditions, which, I think pretty much figured out that they were using entheogenic preparations too, that it was just like a very commonplace thing. In the ancient world. And so I definitely think that they were. And we have this image of the Pythia, the priestess, sort of sitting up over this fissure in the ground and inhaling these fumes that were supposed to, induce these altered states of consciousness. So whether it was different gases seeping up from deep beneath the earth, or actual, plant fumigations, different entheogenic preparations, I definitely think that there was some sort of a chemical aid to what they were doing.
Yeah. It's interesting because I wrote about it in Sacred Wild as well. Because I wrote so much about Delphi, so I just wanted to address this question in people's minds about Delphi. And my theory is that the land spirits would have contributed. Okay, why was the temple where it was? Because it's Mount Parnassus. Mount Parnassus is this huge, it's really more of a mountain range. It becomes part of Mount Helicon as well, where the muses were born. So people think of Olympus as like the mountain of the gods, but Greece is mountains. I mean, the whole country is mostly mountains.
Hmm.
People even think of Greece as islands, but it's actually a mainland that matters most in my worldview as well. Like, it's just, as someone who's been to many of the islands, the Greece, capital G, is the mainland. That's where Athens is. It's where Eleusis is. It's where Delphi is. Um, and the mountain ranges there, like Mount Parnassus, all have a significant energy. So even if it was natural methane, let's say, coming up from the ground, that's the land spirits co-creating the sacred experiences with the oracles. And what is an oracle if not the person who can be the bridge between spirit and the human world?
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Mhm.
Is crocus ever used as a psychoactive plant or an entheogen, or like is it a sacred plant? Because it is poisonous, I'm pretty sure.
Mhm.
Have you ever come across crocus as being used in any traditions for anything?
Not that I'm aware of, not very commonly. Maybe it does pop up in sort of poison path lore just because of the colchicine, the different alkaloids in that that are poisonous, but it's not one that I'm super familiar with as far as like any entheogenic uses.
The reason I ask is I wasn't planning to ask this, but it came up yesterday randomly with a friend of mine, crocuses. We're in spring as we record this, so it's just kind of a general spring conversation, but I was reminded of the myth of crocus from ancient Greece. Crocus is the first flower to arrive at Delphi every year because Apollo fell in love with a mortal man named Crocus, and he promised himself he'd never fall in love with a mortal because, of course, they'll die, but he did anyway. And so, as Crocus is aging, he says, "Don't worry, I will immortalize you as this flower, and you will be the first I see when I arrive back to Delphi every spring." And that's true. I found that out because I noticed it always being the first flower at Delphi, and so I did some research and found that out. So I've always wondered if maybe the crocus was used, or maybe it wasn't, but it's so present in that oracular place.
That definitely could be. I mean, it seems like with a lot of plants that have, a potent chemistry that they do have some kind of entheogenic effect or mind-altering effect to some degree. I think a lot of times we equate entheogens with psychedelics and, very like hallucinogenic trip kind of experience, but there's a lot of different, subtle ways that entheogens can kind of tweak our consciousness and alter our perception. And, oftentimes with these plants of potent chemistry, or what we consider like low dose herbs or potentially poisonous plants, that they are able to create those shifts in consciousness. So it's not always like this intoxication necessarily, but I think just coming into contact with a plant ally that has a powerful chemistry, is parallel to its energetic and spiritual power too. So it's not, chasing the next high or trying to have a crazy trip or anything like that, but just coming into to contact with these very like profound and powerful plant allies, master plant spirits.
How do you see I guess the relationship building that we can do with plant allies in this category, poisonous plants? How do you see that as connected to the land we live on? Like, have you noticed, for example, like if you forage for a plant versus or grow it yourself versus purchasing it? Like, have you had different experiences?
I think that, there's just not really any way to get around the kind of bond that is created when you grow a plant yourself, or when you're at least able to, tend to a living plant, whether it's one that you started from seed or one that you purchased from a garden center and now you're just kind of taking care of it. Um, there's just not really any kind of substitution for that kind of experience and what is transmitted, from a magical ingredient perspective and like a chemical perspective. Purchasing dry plant material is going to be just as effective as, consuming something that you've grown yourself. But there's just something that comes with taking care of it on your own. And even like growing things indoors, in my opinion, is just not the same as letting something grow outside in the ground. It's exposed to all of the different lunar cycles, all of the elements, just all of the different energies going on out there that they're just not really exposed to indoors. So I've definitely noticed a huge difference ever since I moved and went from growing outdoors in a northern climate to growing indoors in a southern climate. The connection is just not the same. And that's been something that has been kind of difficult for me to navigate. Um, it's like I've constantly been sort of trying to recreate and like chase this connection that I had to the land that I was born on and all of the seasons that actually happen that don't happen down here. And it's just a totally, totally different world. So, um, and it might not be this way for everybody, but it was just a very like visceral, intense disconnection. Like not even like homesickness, but it was almost like all of my magic and wonder and just being tapped into all of that kind of got stripped away. And I've had to like very slowly and systematically kind of like piece all of that back together. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, but I still grow the plants inside, even though it's not the same.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that honesty because sometimes we don't want to admit that somebody might be missing out on something if they don't do it the harder way. But that is the reality of building relationship is it does take sacrifice of our time and our energy in ways that are worth it. Like the payoff is always worth it, but it's something to be aware of that it I think is easier. I relate to that strongly because when I'm in Greece, and I was in Greece full time for 4 years, but this past year I've been back in the US a little bit more. And so I was about 50-50 last year. And then this year it's actually going to be only 3 months in Greece and a month in the UK, and then the rest of the time in the United States. So the way that I've had to handle my garden is I actually can have a garden in the US this year. So that's going to be different. We started our saplings inside. We have like an unseasonably cold March. And we're in Northern Maryland, so climate wise, probably similar to where you were up north. But
Mhm.
then in Greece, it's Mediterranean. So we don't have freezes at all on the south. I'm in the south of Greece, and we don't have really we don't have a winter at all. That's our growing season, and then summer is the horrific time for everything. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's been an interesting observation of the contrast. And then it's always wild to me how some things are the same like crocuses or these a lot of these bulb plants like they do come up at the same time even though the climate of spring actually begins in February in the Mediterranean. So it really does it interests me the way the cycles on the planet can have syncretism that you don't expect.
Yeah, yeah. And I've always had a theory about that, and I'm no expert on anything. I'm just some random guy that, rambles things off to people. But I feel like, yes, like temperature changes and humidity levels and the weather, like that all has part to do with it. But I really think that when it comes to the plants understanding like what season it is, what time of year it is, especially like perennials and things that will like die back and go underground and then come back up. Like it has more to do with the angle of the sun and maybe the moon to a degree too. But I think that they're picking up on like really, really subtle changes in like the gravitational pull of the sun. Because if you think about it, as we're orbiting around and the Earth's axis is kind of changing direction on some like minuscule level, like that angle of the sun's gravitational pull is has got to be changing. So I think that it
Yeah.
has more to do with that than anything. But that's just sort of my own thought about how things work. I could be totally wrong.
I don't think that's off base though, because I've often thought of it as with the sun, like how the sun hits us at different angles.
Mhm.
And like I notice it I was just thinking about this yesterday, how the first day back in the United States for me after 6 months in Greece last year, 6 months in a run, just in the Mediterranean. I came back and I went right, like I arrived and woke up. I went to bed at, as soon as I got in, woke up, and my very first day I went out to a lavender festival and we were out in direct sun. But I actually thought we were under shade because I was so used to the Mediterranean sun, which is truly blistering. Like you're driving in your car in the Mediterranean, if you don't have sunscreen on, it could be a 20-minute drive. Like everyone gets sunburned. And like for my retreats and stuff, I'm always warning people, I'm like, bring more sunscreen than you ever would think you'd need because you have to reapply every 4 hours or you will burn and peel if you're white, you know? And people don't really believe me until it happens to them. So I think of that too. Like the sun hits us at such different angles throughout the seasons. Like right now it's March. If I go outside, the sun is so calming and enjoyable in North America. But I know once I arrive back in Greece, literally 24 hours from now, it'll be such a different. I kind of actually dislike the sun in the Mediterranean because it's just too hot.
Yeah, I feel that being down in Florida, it's definitely intense. Like it's already, full blown summer sun, and you walk out and you're in direct sunlight for 5 minutes, and you can just feel your skin is just cooking.
And it's humid, right?
It's not humid right now. So we're in like the part of the year where like it's actually really, really nice and why everybody wants to come down here right now. But in probably a month, the humidity will start going crazy. We'll be getting like thunderstorms every day, and that's when it gets kind of unbearable. It's almost more of just like the stifling weight of the humidity than like the heat or the sun at that point. That's hard to
Yeah.
wade through every day.
Because I think that in it creates the egregore more than people realize as well.
Mhm.
Like the weather shifts all of that. And and when I think about like the plant spirits in a place as well, like it must affect them to
Mhm.
have that humidity or not. Because in Greece it's such a dry heat. Like by July, August, that's actually our fallow time. That's when the land sleeps because it's too hot to be awake. Unless you're the oleander, like you're done for at that
Yeah,
time of
the
year.
oleander for sure. We got a lot of that here too. And that's very much like the same thing. Everything has kind of done what it's going to do for the summertime, and they just sort of, survive through it. And then we do have like the dry season in the winter. Um, but it definitely does influence the egregore and gives the land spirit sort of a different personality, and you definitely like see that reflected in the people too, like the people down here compared to where I'm from up in Indiana are definitely more hot-blooded, more volatile. Everybody's trying to run around and do their lives while we're all like literally down here frying and cooking. And so that kind of comes out in some of our interactions and things like that. And even just looking at the plants that grow around here too, like I would always describe it as um, the Florida plants being very very sharp and very edgy. Not only like in the way that they look, we've got like a lot of palms and everything's very spiky and sharp and like basically like blades growing out of the ground, where back in Indiana, everything's very just like soft and fluffy and even the squirrels down here are just very like skinny and scrappy looking, and then you go up north and they're just like all fat and fluffy, and so totally totally different energy.
I love that you mentioned the emissaries. That's what I call the animals on a land, like that just kind of characterize it. I noticed that too. We were in Poland of all places. The squirrels were super friendly, like to the point where they would just come up to you almost like they wanted pets. It was like intimidating because you're like, I know I'm not
Yeah.
supposed to pet you, but you clearly almost want me to. So I was feeding them. I had nuts with me, so I was feeding them. Um, and in Greece, it's we have feral cats, so that's kind of hit or miss. Sometimes they're very sweet, actually, but we don't have a lot of like, wild animals around like we do in North America. There's a softness to the north of North America that I just love it. I love the contrast of it to, yeah, the Mediterranean and Florida. I'd have to look to be more accurate on this, but I do feel like there's just an intensity as we get closer to the equator, as the sun hits us a little more firmly. Um, have you noticed with your work with poison plants that the climate or even just the time of year, some plants are more suited? Like there's plants that want to work with us in their season only or anything like that.
Um, I find that, I mean, this isn't a plant example, but the mushrooms seem to want to come out more in the wintertime. And
Mm.
I wonder if like part of that is because of the sun going down earlier. So for me, like typically my excuse me, edit that part out. My mushroom ceremonies, I typically only do them at nighttime. I feel like you're able to, I don't know, kind of tap in a little bit more easily and get more of the visionary experiences when it is dark outside versus, the middle of the day. So I find that winter time is kind of the mushroom time, and then moving into, spring or summer, which is, the entire rest of the year. That's when some of the other plant allies start to come out a little bit more. So things that are a little bit more like celebratory, community oriented, as far as like working with other people and things like that. So we've got like blue lotus, tobacco. Um, Speaking like specifically of the nightshades, for me, I feel like those are more definitely more solitary plant allies to work with. Like those aren't ones that I would necessarily work with in a group. And I think that's maybe a little bit more of like their Saturnian nature coming through. So they're just kind of, more about the solitary experience, which makes sense with Saturn being about like separation and boundaries and things like that. So maybe that could be why.
I like that. And if somebody wanted to get started, like they're new to poison plants and they also maybe they're alone, so we also have to think of that part of it. Like what's a good one to start with? Like how do people really begin this journey?
I mean, they're all good to start with. I think that Datura is probably the most common one that people will start with just because it is the easiest to find. It
It's funny.
is,
I knew you were going to say that because I did like a tiny little bibliomancy, and that's the exact page I opened to. And I was going to ask right about it, and then I was like, no, I'll just ask what the best one to start with is. I knew you'd say it. I love that.
yeah, that's too
It spoke
funny.
to us.
It must be, it's got these big trumpet shaped flowers. So I think that that's kind of a, doctrine of signatures to the fact that it's just very like vocal. It's ready to announce itself. It is kind of the most ubiquitous, being native to like North and South America, all of the different varieties, and then the one variety from the Indian subcontinent. It's really kind of spread and found all over the world. So I think that it is the one that is kind of the most willing to come forward, and then it's also like super easy to grow. A lot of times you can find it in garden centers because people grow them as ornamentals too. So it's kind of the most accessible. But interestingly, I think that it also has the most to offer when it comes to healing trauma and working through um, different ancestral related things. So just kind of a very powerful ally for this healing journey that everybody that's currently incarnated on this planet is going through. So, deconstructing a lot of the constructs of colonialism and capitalism and patriarchy. Energetically, Datura is all about sort of transmuting those toxins and being able to kind of purge them, um, and processing through a lot of that stuff. So while plants like deadly nightshade and henbane and mandrake and wolfsbane and foxglove, like they're all very like mystical, magical, witchy, and super cool to connect with and incorporate into spell work. I think on a global kind of a scale and sort of where we are at collective, Datura is the one that is kind of most appropriate for our current place and time. So it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think of it also as like you said, it's kind of got the doctrine of signatures that makes us think of our throat chakra. It's like, don't be quiet right now, be loud. And it also it's so visible and quickly. Like it doesn't hold back as it grows the way, some plants have to be coaxed or, this plant's like, nope, I'm growing and I'm actually gonna be really beautiful and you're gonna love me and you're gonna have a hard time getting rid of me too. And it's just a
Hmm.
lot of that energy that, yeah, we just need that in our moment right now.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely, here to get it done and get it done quick.
What is your take on parsley? Because parsley was used heavily in the Eleusinian mysteries, and it's also everywhere. It's not, I don't think people think of it as a poisonous plant, but it's kind of like nutmeg, and it's all about how much. So
Mhm.
have you worked much with parsley or have you thought much about it?
I mean, not so much beyond its use as like a magical ingredient. So with the whole like concept of the poison path, I've tried to not just focus on plants that are chemically dangerous or potentially dangerous, things that we would commonly associate with being poisonous, but also more baneful herbs that have sort of a sinister kind of association. So things like elder, um, blackthorn, even like rose kind of has some of those baneful elements, and parsley is definitely one of those too. And I think I talk a little bit about it in the Poison Path Herbal, my first book. So it's always kind of had like a diabolical sort of association or all of these different like superstitions and taboos associated with it. And I think it was a funerary herb somewhere at one point too. So it's kind of got these, darker, more baneful elements to it, which we wouldn't normally associate, I don't think, with like a culinary herb.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I'm thinking of like Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, The Service Berry. She talks about how scarcity is completely manufactured by capitalism. Like the reason the service berry or the June berry, which is a native berry to North America, the reason it's not sold in the grocery stores is because it would be impossible to keep it expensive. Because if we started growing it, like they couldn't really justify the cost they would want to, what they would actually want to charge us to buy them
Hmm.
because they're so cheap to actually grow. And I feel that way about parsley and even datura. It's kind of in that category. It's so ubiquitous. So we kind of I think because we assume scarcity equals value because we all grow up in this capitalist understanding of that, we can apply that to the things our herbs and like I had a friend over a couple of weeks ago and she was standing in my kitchen with me and she's like, I really want to get into kitchen witchcraft, but it's just such an investment. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, I have to buy all the new herbs. I was like, you don't have a spice rack with like oregano and stuff on it? Because I know her, she cooks. She's like, yeah, of course I do. I was like, why would you need to buy more? They're food grade.
Mhm.
You're good. You could start right now. So I pulled her over and I was like, look, I'm literally doing kitchen witchcraft as you're talking. I'm stirring this clockwise. And she's like, oh, I just thought unless it's special for it, it can't really work for that. I was like, "What? Absolutely not. Like it is special for it because it is oregano or it is rosemary. It's gonna do what rosemary does. Sure,
Right.
you're not gonna have the same connection as if you grew it and fostered it and oh, your mom gave you the sapling. Obviously we can deepen those things, but we don't have to. It's right there for us. And so I think we can instantly say to ourselves, oh, parsley, it's probably got limited application because it's affordable, because it's accessible, but not at all.
No, not at all. Interestingly, parsley is one of the ingredients that is commonly echoed in all of the medieval and early modern witches' flying ointment recipes,
Oh, really? Which is
which is
funny because
interesting.
I did want to talk to you about flying ointment today. So please tell us more.
Well, all of the recipes that have survived regarding the witch's flying ointment as we know it today, which was an entheogenic or mind-altering preparation that was believed to help people either through dreams or through delusions or visions travel to the witch's Sabbath. So this is a very, very kind of messy topic just because, there's just a lot to unpack when it comes to where it actually came from, where this idea came from, what was true, what was just being like, um, kind of made up about it, what people were actually doing, was it just propaganda from the Inquisition, or was this something that was actually part of the beliefs of the common people or the knowledge of the common people at the time? So it's basically a salve that you would rub on your skin that would cause you to fall into a deep sleep and through this dream state be able to travel in spirit to go and do different things. All of the recipes kind of echo the one before that came before it. So basically, like all of these, like natural, natural magic, sciency, occultist guys, kind of like copying each other's work, and then just maybe like tweaking one or two ingredients and making it their own recipe. So they're basically all the same thing. Um,
Interesting.
Consisting of things like deadly nightshade, aconite or wolfsbane, poison hemlock pops up quite a bit in the recipes, and then there'll be just like a little bit of an adjustment when it comes to some of the other ingredients, but it's normally some kind of combination of a nightshade with some other things added to it. Um, the other ingredients are typically not known for having any kind of like poisonous or mind altering effect. So things like cinquefoil or five finger grass, parsley is a common one. I'm trying to think of off the top of my head. Um, so it's you wonder like why are they including these ingredients that don't really have any kind of an active chemistry that is synergistically adding to the effects of these other like obviously very potent plants. Like why are these in there? Why do they keep popping up? So it's kind of interesting to look at that. I've had some theories about it as far as like looking at the non-poisonous ingredients and seeing that they all have the um, astringency or like an astringent effect in common. So I wonder if that kind of played some sort of a role in helping the active compounds of the other plants kind of absorb through the skin more efficiently, something like
Yeah.
that. So
Well, and I remember you just blew my mind when had you on Magic Kitchen and you talked about how animal fats would probably have been a requirement essentially for these ointments to really work effectively versus like
yeah,
a coconut oil or something.
for sure. Yep,
It's
animal
so
fats and
interesting.
fresh juices. A little bit different than how we make them today, thanks to clinical herbalism.
Yeah. Yeah, you think about that too. Like what was lost when we just doubled down on, the medicinalizing of it? Because
Yeah,
it's commodification in the end.
it
That's what
really
it
is.
is.
And like herbalism's great. All of the herbalists are wonderful, but it's all, there's all of these rules and all of these safeguards and all of this like, oh, well, you know, you're not competent enough to be, making your own decisions and doing it on your own. You've got to, go through somebody that's got all of these trainings and certifications and things like that. And it's like really at the end of the day, like, yes, there are risks involved. There are certain scenarios where you could find yourself in a situation that is not, beneficial to your health, but the gray area, the wiggle room, the it's just like seems to be made into this thing that is way more dramatic than it needs to be, and I think that does have to kind of do with the commodification or like anytime there's a regulatory agency for something, Like right now, I'm actually just dealing with getting my cosmetology license transferred back down into Florida. And part of me is just like, why are you even doing this to yourself? Like, you're just dealing with another licensing agency for like really no reason. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
all of those chemicals are the same. They're
I know. Well, and it is such a, even just the difference between like seeing an American doctor and a European doctor. I've seen doctors in Malta, Greece, obviously, is my main place for medical care, the UK as well. And I've never seen a doctor outside of the United States that they kind of leave it up to you outside of the US. They're like, well, I would take this medication in this way, but notice how it affects your body. Maybe you need a little more, a little less. You know, like in America, there's very call me, do exactly what I've written down. But I think it comes from the lawsuit culture. Like I think people in America don't really
hmm
understand like that CYA, like the cover your ass culture is it affects everything we do here. Every single thing we do.
so much. And it's, there's just so much like bullshit to try and sift through that, you've been giving all of your disclaimers for an hour before you even get to the thing that you're there for.
Yep. 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 And that's why I love your books because you don't do that. Like I literally I want to like shout out Destiny Books because they let you run with it. And Nicholas Pearson, he gets to write what he wants to write. And I love that. Like I love my publishers too, but I have had some comments that things we have to remove from the book that I'm like, this is crazy. So I still teach it. When I go to my workshops or I'm at a festival, whatever, I will literally say, in chapter 6, I would have had this exercise, but I can't but here it is, because I don't really think it's toxic or dangerous or problematic. Literally things like pick a dandelion, and they're like, well, you have to be careful because what if they pick every dandelion and they cause major. And I'm like, yeah, but Roundup is legal. So even if they picked every single dandelion in their yard, it still wouldn't be illegal. So it is, I think for people who are on the outside who haven't, published or posted a reel or we don't you might not necessarily understand that like we're not gatekeeping things. We're CYAing because we have to and actually do message us, do come to our classes, do go to that festival because you will actually learn a lot more than
Yeah,
we
I mean,
can
when
say
something
in
is
public
is like
ways.
forever put into print, it's just that much easier for for that to potentially come back around and haunt you. I've been super lucky with my publishers, that they were even willing to cover a topic like this because there is so much stigma attached to it. Um, and that's just like something that I've learned with doing what I've been doing for this long. Everybody kind of has that initial, um, fear-based reaction and this like sort of sense of trepidation when they start working with these plants. And not to say that, some of them aren't, very dangerous. Like there's ones that I would never, never consume. Um, but we're just sort of like under the impression that if you make a mistake, there's no turning back and that you're just going to be dead.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's,
It's the same reason they don't want us foraging or gardening for ourselves, It creates scarcity. We now have to go to a grocery store to eat when like I was outside just before this, I did some grounding outside barefoot in my grass and I was looking at all the dead nettle and I was like this is a feast out here. I've got chickweed, dead nettle, cleavers just in like one tiny patch of forgotten grass, it's incredible what's out there and people will never just grab that and saute it up because they're just afraid. They're like, oh, what if it's not cleavers this time? Like, well, what could it
right.
be? Even if it's grass, it'll just taste awful. You'll be
Yeah, it
okay.
might taste bad or it might give you a tummy ache or, you
Just
might
like our
see.
dogs, right? They eat the grass, they learn, okay, don't eat the grass, and then they eat it again
Exactly.
anyway.
You know,
Well, Kobe, thank you for being here. Tell everybody where they can find you, and Poison Path Oracle is available now. This episode will come out in June, I think, or July even.
Cool.
So,
Yeah, you can find me on social media at Poisoner's Apothecary. Also, check out my website, thepoisonersapothecary.com, where you can find copies of all of my books. And we also have the Poison Path Oracle deck, which will be out in September. So if you're seeing this in June, it'll be out, just 2 or 3 months from now.
ooh, yeah, pre-order it. Pre-orders help us so much as authors. It is how we know it's going to work as a book. So please pre-order that deck. I'm super excited for it. I almost forgot that it isn't out yet. I'm so excited for it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but it's going to be pretty cool. There's definitely not another deck like it in existence. So I'm really excited to be sharing that.
is it safe to say, because we can cut this part out, but that you'll be at Samhainfest in 2026?
I think it's safe to say. I don't see why not.
So come to Samhainfest and learn more from Coby and get your own Poisoner's Apothecary things and your book signed. And
Yeah.
maybe your deck signed, actually. Will it be out by October 31st? I think
Yeah,
so.
by then the decks will be out, so I'll definitely have those with me too.
Oh, that's awesome. I can't wait for that. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for seeking Numina with me today. Join me at patreon.com/Elyse Welles to support this show and get access to a library of rituals, exclusive videos, meditations, and more. To learn more about my upcoming retreats, book a tarot reading, or learn with me in workshops, classes, or mentorship, visit seekingnumina.com.